So last time you guys constructed your coil slabs at home, and hopefully by now you've submitted images for me to see where you're at, and we've done some video where we've discussed what you're doing, and I've seen your sketches of what you're intending to do with the surface, or what you're going to make it, how your piece is going to look design wise. This piece, last time I built it up to this point, and since it's been a week since I worked on this piece of clay, you can see it's a lot stiffer down here. This piece up here, I added yesterday because I knew that I couldn't wait till the next time to make a video of this to go over the steps. But it's a good teaching tool to remind you that we're going to build this in steps as we go. So right now this is 3 layers of the coil slab. And you can see that construction wise, that taking this tool, which is a 9-inch tool, it's almost at the height that you need. The handout's going to tell you it's 10 to 14 inches tall. So this is almost there height wise. So now today I'm going to add a layer just to revisit how to add a layer. Then I'm going to go over how to add clay to this lower section. So if you're sculpting or planning to have an object coming up the piece in any way, or a surface in any way, from the pinch pulls you've seen lots of different texture techniques. We're going to be working on this sculpture to make it your own and make it an artistic piece rather than just a straight tube. Remember to have your piece of canvas, or go get a piece of canvas for the top of the table or wherever you're working, and hopefully you have your board and stuff going. So here's the pieces that I cut off of this again. Remember, the clay out of the bag has already been pre-done. This clay I pounded yesterday with the mallet, so it's ready to go. So here we go. I'm doing my gravity fed coil again. And then putting it back on the table, I'm going to pound it. Remember, I'm making these belts that are the walls. So I pound in the middle, then I pound to one edge, and then I pound to the other edge. Then I pick up the piece and tap this edge to flatten it so I have more area for slipping and scoring. So, taking my knife, the little excess pieces again. We're going to use these for sculpting in a little bit. Take my slab, and now I'm going to slip and score. So here we go with the fork again. So I went straight down, now I'm going at 45-degree angles for the cross hatching. So just like that. My slip for my glue, put into the hatching. Just like that. Now, pull the piece towards me. I'm going to look, and the last one ended right here. So I'm going to put the next one overlapping that seam. What happens is, as you construct this way, if you build vertically up and you finish your seam, this cut right here, all the way up, it's going to be like a big zipper. And sometimes they pop open there. So you want to step your endings of each layer so they're not in the same spot. It's just an extra little step, precaution, to make sure that everything stays together. So here I'm tapping again. Then I'm going to push up. My other hand, remember, hands are working to the team. I'm pushing up with my bottom hand, and then I'm going to push down, and I'm going to start working this seam together. Remember this tool again, or rib. I'm going to start working the seam with that tool, and you'll see me using it in different ways. So right now I'm going up with it, then I'm going sideways, and I'm smoothing out that line. You can see I'm melding the two pieces together. I'm working on making the clay into one object. If you don't do the layering correctly, when we bisque fire it, once in a while I'll see a piece that breaks off into the rings. It'll actually be all the separate little rings. And that's not quite the end of the world. I've glazed pieces back together when they're simple basic sections split apart. It's when they pop into little tiny pieces that's more troublesome. So what I'm doing now is same thing, smoothing out the inside. So So this one, then I'm going back to my pinching again, this step. Stretch it out a little bit. Remember, when you're pinching this like this, it thins it out. It also gives you additional height, and you can see how now it's up to the edge of this tool. So, remember the 45-degree cuts. So it's for my locking system on the ends of this slab that it looks like a belt. So you can see the seams. So I'm going to take my next piece, which this might be too much. I'm going to just tear a piece off. Just going to squeeze in my hand until I start creating a coil. And then I'm using this part of my hand again and gravity and pushing from my shoulders to my elbows locked. And you notice they're tight to my ribs. Some people do have their hands out like that as they work. Whatever's comfortable for you. You'll figure out over time in practice, doing this multiple times, you're going to figure out what works. Now, I always warn students, if you try to do this all at once, we're the society that likes to try to get everything done at once sometimes. Some people would like to take their time, some people are in a hurry. If you do a lot of coil slab building in one day and you haven't used these muscles before, you'll feel it the next day. You'll feel it in your lower back, your shoulders will be a little bit tight. Sometimes your wrists will be tight, your elbows. And it's just getting to a new muscle memory. But your hands and your eyes and your pressure with your hands, you'll start getting a memory of what works for this, and it'll get easier. And you can see this coil is probably more than I need, but that's okay. Because it's better to have more than less. That way I don't have to add 3 of them. Move that to the side again so you can see a little bit better. I always think of these as belts. When they're little ones, when they're little coil slabs, I always think of them like Band-Aids. And this size, I always think like a belt, like it's almost like a belt. And periodically, the knife that you're using, you want to make sure you clean the blade off periodically. It just makes life a little bit easier. So this clay, again, pound it. And I use these blue shop towels a lot. And I know I talked about it last time to keep stuff wet as I work. So now I've created my own puzzle piece again. And right now it's a little bit longer than I need. So I'm going to look at my 45-degree angle with the knife from above and move over. And then keep that angle. You can see. So I adjust this, you can see how that's going to fit. I'm not that worried about one side being higher than the other because I still got to pinch it. So as I work it, I'll work on getting the top a little bit more even in a second. Take that off. Everything's already slipped and scored, or scored there. No slip yet. So I'm going to score this one. Same as the last one. Cross, and then the 45 back and forth. And get a good tooth up. Remember from last time, don't poke this way, you'll make air pockets. Air pockets are not our friend. Air pockets are what will make the piece pop. That's why you want to be generous with the slip. You don't want to just go, there, I'm done slipping. No. You want to make sure you put enough slip into the gaps so it can adhere together as a gluing agent. Here's the next section. And I'm going to tap the top again. And then this one, you can see the top sticks out a little bit more, so I'm not going to push too much from the bottom up. I'm just going to work down. And sometimes that's part of this is your piece. So you're going to be making the decisions as you construct to solve your own problems. And that's something that's highly important with any of the arts is I can show you the basic techniques, but you're going to figure out with your hands, your eyes, your brain, to figure out how to work, what works for you. You know, there's multiple ways to construct in this fashion. This is the way that I've been doing it for about 18 years. It's just a fast way to work where you can construct something that starts taking up visual space and physical space. It gets big quick with this process. You know, like I said, from last session to this session, and I added just one layer over the last couple of days just to make sure we had a workable section. You can see how big this has been getting already, and getting closer. So what's happening is I'm getting my template done. So it's like a sketch. I got the basics here, but now I got to move on to what am I going to do with it? What am I going to do to make it my own? What am I going to do to put that whole concept of historical and contemporary? Right now it's just a tube. And whether it's some of your pieces might not have the base. They might be open at the bottom. Some of you have them closed off like this. So we got to go to the next step. Where do we go from here? That's what I'm getting at. Now, myself, I'm going to pinch this up. And let's say you are a little bit bothered by one side being higher than the other, or it's uneven a little bit, and you want to even this out. So I'm going to go over here really quick and grab another board. You can also use a piece of PVC pipe or a brick if you have a loose brick somewhere. I'm going to take this board, put it on there, and then just tap. I also use a level a lot. And I can see right now, even visually, I can see this side is higher, so I'm going to push that. So this will flatten the top out a little bit, and it'll even it out in case you're bothered by this edge being uneven. Another thing you can do is you want to be careful doing this, is you can always cut them down a little bit. Just hold the knife steady, elbow tight, wrist tight, and you can turn and go. And it'll flatten it out and even out the top a little bit. That way it's ready for the next section. And then of course, as soon as I just flattened this out, I went back and pinched it a little bit. So at this point, we're going to move to the next step. What are we going to do out here? Some of you sent me ideas where you're going to be texturing and making a decoration here by carving or adding material. Some will be adding material, so I'm going to go over timing. So the top here is still wet. Down here is already leather hard. First thing you're going to do is add a layer. Then you're going to go, okay, what am I planning to do down here? I better take care of it now. Because by next time, when you add the next layer, let's say it's tomorrow, this bottom section might be too dry for you to do anything. And anything you do will pop off or might not want to stick. I want to just do a quick demo on how to add clay to clay down here and then how to turn it into something. So I'm going to take this ball of clay, make a quick coil. And if you were one of my students who started looking at pottery from Japan, especially historical, what's called jomon, it's like a rope texture. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this piece of clay, roll it on itself so it looks like this, or I always think of, what is it called, cinnamon rolls. I'm going to take this coil that I just made, flatten it a little bit. I'm going to use my knife, shave it down a little bit. And you'll notice I didn't slip and score any of that coil as I made it, because I'm going to slip and score the back. So here I'm going to texture this really, really well. I want to be careful not to get any air pockets again. Then I'm going to add my slip to it. Now right now I'm not going to shove this onto this piece just yet. What I'm going to do is, if I want this here, then I'm just going to push down a little bit, and the slip will leave me a mark of where I need to score to add this piece right here. So since the clay at the lower section is in a state called leather hard, I can still add to it. Once it's getting to a drier state, it's going to be harder to add to it and not have the piece pop off. Because as the clay dries, it shrinks. So this piece, as it's been drying, is shrinking a little bit. So if I add wet clay to this, and this piece is too dry, it's already pre-shrunk. When this shrinks, they're not going to shrink the same, it's going to pop off. So here you can see how much slip I put on there. Now I got to carefully push this on and not lose my decoration. And you can see I have extra slip on there. That's fine because I just smear it around. Now if you do lose a little bit of the decoration, the line, I'm going to take one of these other tools and recreate that texture a little bit. And I can also do stuff like add more texture to it. So this coil, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more texture to it. And now I've added this piece to my object, to my vessel, and now I have this decorative motif. Now I can keep doing this. I can keep adding these and create a whole pattern of them, if that's the plan that you had in your drawings that you sent to me. I can also, since this is hard but not quite that hard, I can use my hand on the inside to push a little bit and start shaping this. Now this is a little dry for that. Now, but if I go up a section, the section I added yesterday, all I'm doing right now is using my middle finger to push out, and then I can create that same type of form, but from the inside out. Now you gotta be careful. If this clay right here is too wet and you push it out, the clay weight here will push it down and you'll start collapsing your form. And it'll start looking like a sunken bag. So there, I've added another piece here. I didn't add here, but I've shaped it into this form that's coming out of the side of the piece. Now from there, I can put my inside hand in there and then push with my tool. And I'm going to create another form of decoration that is more of a historical image. It's a sun with four rays, 4 prongs coming out. See it more in South America a little bit. And I'm going to do more with the face later, but right now I'm going to just leave it a little bit more abstracted. And you can see now I have a different decoration going on here versus my little coil snake that's going on there. So that's just some basics on how to start dealing with the surface of your piece. You can add clay, or if it's still soft enough, still push it out with timing. Now, I'm going to do another quick aspect of this in just a second. Just going to push this out a little bit more. After I shaped it and carved into it, now I can push it out a little bit and recreate it a little bit. Okay. Now, down here, another thing you could do is this bottom section is pretty dry. This upper section is pretty dry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm putting my hand on the inside carefully, and then I'll feel the blade inside. I'm going to cut a little doorway out. In case you submitted a drawing with negative space. Let's say you want to make this into something that you can put a lantern in or light up from the inside. So I've cut this section out, and I'll cut more of those as I go around, but I'm waiting till this part right here, right above it, is dry enough that it's not going to sink down into the cutout. Okay, so this is stiff, so I can cut out this section here. It's not going to sink in right here from all the weight of everything going up. So I would not cut a window out like this up here, because as I add, if this is too soft, it's going to sink in. Okay. Now, of course, if you do a cutout like that and you're worried about this sinking in, don't use the wet blue towel, but use a piece of newspaper that's dry, or any paper that's dry. You can actually put a piece of paper in there to stay there until this dries out even more. Okay, so that's 3 different ideas of how to deal with surface without even talking about glazes on this piece. And you can see we're continuing to construct. Next time I'll discuss how to stretch this out in case you're planning to have a curve. Okay.